CEO of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Anjali Sharma, and we're going to be talking about her book, Strategic Storytelling: Why Some Stories Drive Your Success at Work and Why Others Don't. Great book. Where can people find you if they wanted to look for you on the internet?
Oh, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm even on TikTok.
Excellent. But
Yeah,
LinkedIn is the main place, isn't it?
that's right. LinkedIn is the main place. If all fails, just go to narrative.com.sg and I'm there.
Excellent. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book. Great book. And I love the way that you focus on, there's lots of books on storytelling, but you focus very much on the corporate storytelling.
That's right.
You say a few things which I know I've seen it before, where people have basically told stories in a corporate environment and they just haven't worked.
That's true.
So tell us about what was the inspiration behind the book?
Oh, well, the first time I started writing this book, like the first time the thought of writing the book came into my mind was somewhere in 2019. And we were already 6 to 7 years in running the practice. And I thought, okay, I should really write this book. And the reason why I wanted to write it was because I'm a practitioner first, which means I do this work every single day. So this is not research-based work or work that is, I'm kind of reading in other books. And I was having these experiences which I thought were unique. And I was like, oh, I should document this somewhere, because if I don't document this, I'm going to forget. And I should really build a discipline of writing these little learnings of mine somewhere. And to give you an example of that very quickly, for example, there was this project in 2018 I had just come out of in Japan, which was a very long project. And on the very last day of the project, when I thought, I was in this factory and I thought my work was done there, and we were doing work around inclusion, I heard a conversation between two people. And one person said to the other person that we get why inclusion is important and stories have truly done the job. But what I don't get is, why is inclusion important for this factory? Performance is way more important. And I was like, oh God, they haven't connected inclusion to performance. And then I did more work to bridge that gap. And I was like, see, that's such a big learning for me. And I want to capture that in the writing, that sometimes we can be like, inclusion is important, but a factory worker wants to know why performance is important and how inclusion contributes towards that. Or else inclusion just becomes like one of these other good things to do. So it's things like that were happening. As I said, I'm a practitioner first. You practice every day and then you go, I'll forget this and I'll forget this and I'll forget this. So documenting was the inspiration.
You write the book very much from a practical point of view.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of frameworks that you provide, and you also do all of the pledges at the end of the chapters as well. You also throw some cartoons in as well.
Hi, I did. For a bit of fun, isn't it?
Yeah. So what differentiates a story that works, and why do some of them fall flat?
Yeah. So if we were to go and catch a child in a bus or a train station, and we'll say, have you heard a great story? And they'll most likely they'll say, yeah. And okay, which story was that? Depending on the age of the child, they'll probably say, Red Riding Hood is a great story, Harry Potter is a great story, or somebody who's a film fanatic will probably say Wonder Woman is a great story. So stories, or these days someone would pick up a series from Netflix and say, right now, like adolescents, like that is hugely, kind of trending on Netflix. That's a great story. And those are great stories, no doubt. And that's where our thought goes when we think about stories, right? But when you come into the corporate world, even though that is a great story, that's not the story that works in the corporate world. And we just simply take lessons from those kinds of storytelling domains and apply them in the corporate world, and it doesn't work. So the question is, what is the difference between a story that works and the story that doesn't work, is really the key differentiator is resonance. So the story that is going to make me sit when you are telling me that story and make me go, that happens to me all the time. That's so true. When I say, oh, that's so true, I don't mean that's factual. What I mean is it is an experience I have lived. So I think if you want to tell a story to be successful in a corporate boardroom, then resonance is a very, very important aspect. Entertainment isn't. And I think a lot of us think of stories as purely a form of entertainment.
Because you talk in the book a lot about knowing your audience.
Yeah.
And the fact that you actually say that, a story you might tell at a conference where there's 250 people would be different to a story that you might tell in a boardroom, where the board are likely to say, just get to the point. And maybe different than what you would use at a team meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the common denominator there really is, who am I telling the stories? It always surprises me how the lesson number one of communication is always know your audience, yet it remains the lesson number one after so many years, because it is a lesson that is not understood, because our subconscious just takes over and we start telling stories in a way that actually doesn't make sense to people. So for example, when I'm standing on a stage and I have 500 people, that automatically lends itself to a certain level of entertainment, a certain level of engage me, educate me, entertain me. It's a platform that demands that. If I straight got into an educational aspect there, everyone would be bored out of their mind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So a stage demands that. Therefore, the choice of stories that I would use over there are largely high character, high emotion, the one that will move the audience from a very kind of an emotional level. However, if I was to come into a boardroom, nobody's wanting to be emotional there. Everyone wants a business result driven there. Because see, the 500 people who are watching me on the stage made a decision that they want to come and listen to me, and they are watching me like a speaker. But the people who are sitting in the boardroom are looking at their watch and going, this girl asked for 30 minutes. I hope she gets to the point in 30 minutes, and I hope we move the agenda forward in 30 minutes. It's a very different type of audience who are looking for a very different outcome. They're not wanting to be entertained. They want results to be driven. So therefore, the choice of stories on both those occasions would be very, very different for me.
Can you give us an example of something where a story that you might tell in a business context rather than because I think what happens is that many of us basically, we sit and say we've got to give a presentation. And we don't really, when we think about stories, we think about Harry Potter and we think, I can't do this. So we just go back to the facts.
Yeah. And what you just said reminded me. I'll give you an example for sure. But what you said is so true, because it reminded me of just about 6 months ago. I was in Guangzhou, China, working with one of the world's biggest beauty companies, very top 20 senior leaders. And we were kind of looking at how do we take building the business in a certain geography. How do we kind of tell that story of this business there? And I kind of, worked with them, and I put them in a certain situation. And I said, okay, here's a part where you need to tell a story that brings this point home. And a really, really smart, articulate, well-spoken, years of experience leader got up and told the Nokia story. And I asked him, I'm just going to call him Mark. His name was not Mark. I said, Mark, how many years you've been with the company? And he says, more than 30. I said, in your 30 years, you've not had an experience, which I'm sure you've had an experience that we can incorporate into this. Why did we go to Nokia story? And he's like, yeah, that's so true. Why did I go to Nokia story? I mean, there are stories from my own experience. And all it needed was for me to remind him that, you can use the story from your own experience. The Nokia, the Kodak stories are so done to that. Yeah. And I don't think we need to use them anymore. The stories that resonate are stories that happen around people. So let me give you an example. Okay. So this is again a real life example. Um, so the objective here is that we want the management, the senior leadership team, to give us funding to run a campaign that will educate the healthcare practitioner on how best to use our infant milk formula. So we produce advanced infant milk formula, which is a product that is only given on prescription. You can't just go and buy it off the shelf. So babies who have a very special requirement go to the doctor, who are born premature, go to the doctor, and doctor prescribe this particular product. And we want management to give us money via the healthcare, the product company. We want management to give us money because we think the healthcare practitioners are not prescribing our product correctly. We've recognized that. And the logical way would be we'll walk in and we'll say, we request you to approve a certain amount of budget because we want to educate the healthcare practitioner and want to spend time, effort, and money on that so that they can start prescribing the product properly. There'll be every reason, there'll be every stat, every data point, and management will be like, we've done well for so many years. You don't need all this money. We've been number one in the market for so many years. You don't just please make it work. But if you were to do it from a story format, this is what it would sound like. So you walk in and you sort of say, I'm going to take the first 5 minutes to make a very clear point that should we not run the educational campaign for the healthcare practitioner very, very soon, we run the risk of losing our brand's reputation and therefore lose an immense amount of market share as well. With this, let me get started. 2 weeks ago, we received a call at 8 p.m. at our customer care call center. The call was made by a lady named Sarah who had a baby who had turned blue-black within seconds of consuming our product. When the customer care call center picked up the call, she immediately advised Sarah to take the baby to the emergency department of the hospital. Sarah dashed to the hospital. The baby is fine, but we were not fine, and we needed to investigate whether something with what happened with the baby had to do something with our product. And we started to look into our call records and really look into the quality of the calls and see if there is anything that indicates this. We also met Sarah, and this is what we found. What we found is that there are many calls, close to 25% of the calls over the last 1 month, that indicate that when doctors are prescribing this product, they are not looking into two aspects of the prescription. You have to talk about the dilution of the product based on the baby's weight and manage the flow of the tube, because the product is only given through the tube. It's not given orally. And manage the flow of the tube also based on the baby's weight. Those 2 points are missing, and that is leading to a lot of difficult situations. Therefore, we need to run this campaign. And if we don't, then these confusions on the call will result into very bad outcomes. And not only will we lose our market share, we just do not want to think about what will happen to our brand image and our reputation. And then you kind of go into a further analysis of it. So this is a real life story that was told by a senior manager to the leadership team. What's interesting here is that the senior manager did not decide to sort of say, think about that poor baby. It is right to do that, but it is even more right for you to get your leadership team to imagine in the front page of the newspaper and see product banned. How do you feel about that? All right. And I think that's where the cleverness of this, you have to be able to really be sharp about how you use where you use what kind of a story.
I think that's a great story. I was about to write a check. And I would think that the leadership team, you would get action from the leadership team from the back of that.
Yeah. A leadership team, if they don't all jump in and say, go, 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 they'll say, this sounds very important. Let's put this up in priority and let's look at it straight away. What do we need to do? They get into an investigation mode for sure. You get their attention, right? And it is important. And I think otherwise you're like doing 5 presentations and being ignored.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a story that works in a boardroom.
And the thing is that, you're competing with other people and other priorities. Yeah. And if you want to get your priority, you need to make sure that you're getting that emotional connection with the listener.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what you just said about an emotional connection, I think one of the challenges we have is that emotional connection is just so loosely understood. Emotional connection for majority of the world is make me cry. Well, that's a great emotional connection if you're sitting and watching a film. But emotional connection comes from very many different places. Emotional connection comes from my career success. Connection comes from I want to build a legacy. Emotional connection comes from I want to be the best CEO this company has ever seen. And I think what we don't do is we don't explore the variety of the emotional connection, and we just get caught. Emotional connection means crying, and that's not what it is. Emotions are complex, they're varied, and we have to really try and understand which one do we need to really kind of we have to have the understanding of the worldview to figure out which one works here where.
Why do you think many of us struggle with this in a corporate context?
Yeah. See, why do people struggle with this? So everyone who's listening, I'm just coming out of a viral fever. So if I cough every now and then, please pardon me. Tim's been very kind to still host this chat despite my cough. Why do people struggle with this? I think the first reason why they struggle with this is that, see, we come from a space where authority was a big thing in the past. So senior people said, we did, right? Because what did senior people have in the past? In the past, senior people had the experience and the knowledge that they gained through the experience. Now we have the same knowledge or a lot of the knowledge without that experience. So the competitive edge of seniority is the ability to influence. It's not the knowledge, because a lot of people have access to knowledge already. So there are not that many great real role models that we've had who go into the depth of really understanding people's worldview, right? For example, in 2016, when I was working with the semiconductor company, the senior leader the factory head found it really, really hard to understand. Why can't I just tell people that we need to turn the factory into a smart factory because it increases the productivity of the business? And I'm like, there is another side to this. What if people think we turn the factory into a smart factory? That means you're telling me, let me help you make the factory a smart factory, which means there are more robots and automation, which in essence means goodbye to you. Have you seen the depth of that? And he's like, oh. I said, yes. So I said, the times have changed. So the role models in the past really didn't kind of, needed to do this in the corporate world as much, because things were slightly different. So one, it is lack of like kind of, the traditional way of communication. And I think the second thing is you can find really good examples of storytelling on the stage, in writing, in TED Talks online. So you can learn a lot from watching things online. But nobody's going to put their boardroom conversation on YouTube. Nobody's going to put a senior leadership meeting on YouTube. Therefore, we don't have access to that learning. And so what we do is we naively draw lessons from this broad form storytelling, and we think storytelling is storytelling and is storytelling. So I'm just going to pick this up and put it in there, and then boom, it backs on my face. I'm not successful. Therefore, I come back with a label on my forehead. I'm not a good storyteller, not for me. It's because lack of role models and lack of really places where corporate storytelling really kind of is available in the public domain for you to learn from. Nobody's going to put their YouTube video of their boardroom conversation for you to learn from it. They're private and confidential.
So we've had a couple of comments. Asif Saeed basically says, good work, Anjali.
Thank you.
And subject Joel basically confirms what this is based on the back of that great story that you told, that differentiation comes from the nuance. Great example, exclamation mark, great example. Describing process makes great strategic stories as well. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book. Excellent example. And if we were wanting to buy a copy, where could we get a copy?
It's available on all major platforms. It's on Amazon, it's on Wordery, it's on, any platform that if you're in India, it's on Flipkart, but it's on every major platform. The Audible version is available as well. The ebook is available as well. If you just type strategic storytelling, Anjali Sharma, there'll be number of platforms for you to be able to get the copy from.
And Anjali, where can we find details about you?
About me, LinkedIn is my main platform simply because of the language I speak, which is mostly designed for corporate professionals. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on Instagram, which is where I share a little bit about, my life a little bit, how I kind of things I do and how I do what I do. I'm also on TikTok for a very different type of audience. Instagram and TikTok is both Anjali Stories. But LinkedIn, Anjali Sharma Storytelling, you'll be able to find me.
Anjali, thank you so much for coming on. And it looks like your cough just about kept it at bay.